It's hard to believe that 10 years ago, the PlayStation Vita came out. Now, we all know that unfortunately this system did well, but that has not stopped many fans like myself from enjoying this game and the homebrew community enjoying this system. So, we're going to take a little look back on the Vita as well as some of my favorite games on the Vita and why I love them so much. Before we can talk about the PlayStation Vita, we need to talk about the PSP. The PSP was released in 2005. While it didn't sell as much as the DS, it was still a major success for Sony, selling around 82 million units sold. Around 2009 to 2010, Sony was already hinting that a new handheld was coming. In 2011, they gave it its codename, the NGP, which stands for Next Gen Portable. But in E3 2011, they unveiled its name, the PlayStation Vita, which means life in Latin. During their show, they showed off the power of the Vita as well as its feature. Also an infamous part where they announced that they were partnering AT&T to help them with the Wi-Fi.
And we'll be partnering with AT&T as the exclusive carrier for PlayStation Vita in the United States.
There we go. That being said, the Vita still had a lot of hype. With the 3DS struggling at first, you would think Sony would have capitalized this for their new system. Well, we'll get to why the system failed in just a minute. So let's take a look at the system itself. I find the design of the Vita to be perfect. Not only is it beautiful to the eyes, the wide format of the system is so comfortable. It uses a touchscreen as well as a touchpad in the back, which only a few games use, such as Tearaway. The shoulder buttons are really nice, and plus the system has two cameras to take photos. One of the biggest improvements the Vita has over the PSP is the addition of a second analog stick. One of the few problems people had with the PSP was no second analog stick. Because of this, certain games had to use a fixed camera or have the shoulder buttons do the camera movement. If you're playing an FPS, then you will have to use the face buttons as the second analog stick. I didn't mind it so much, but I know many people hated this control scheme. With the Vita, the problem is fixed. The analog sticks work fine, but they feel a little small. Now, if there's one thing that I think the Vita is amazing, and I don't think it's talked much, it's the D-pad. In my opinion, I think this is one of the greatest D-pads for any handheld. It is perfect for 2D gaming as well as fighting games, and it just feels so good in my thumb. It's very clicky and very responsive. And of course, if we're going to talk about the Vita, we have to talk about that OLED screen. It is absolutely gorgeous and bright. The colors pop out and it's just beautiful to look at. In 2014, they released a slimmer Vita, making it more smaller and an improved battery life. However, though, they got rid of the OLED screen for an LCD screen. The reason for this was because of how expensive the OLED screen was, so to cut costs, they had to change the screen, and sadly, for the worse. At first, it's not noticeable, but if you've been playing an OLED screen Vita for a while, then you go to the Slim, you're going to see the difference. But now it's time to get to the worst part about the Vita, and it's one if not the main reason why the system failed. It's the memory cards. The Vita is required to have these memory cards, and you have to use them. Because the Vita didn't really accept SD cards, you will have to use these memory cards instead, and they were beyond expensive. The PSP had memory cards, but at least you were given the option to have cheaper brand memory cards, so you didn't have to spend too much. But with the Vita, get ready to spend up to $50 or even $70 for some of these memory cards. And if you want the 64GB memory card that's only released in Japan, get ready to spend $100 or more for it. However, though, that's not one of the main reasons why this system failed. The other was the PS4 and its hype. In 2013, Sony revealed the PS4 as part of the next generation of consoles, in an attempt to redeem themselves for the PS3's disastrous launch back in 2006. With Microsoft completely shooting themselves in the foot with the Xbox One reveal, all momentum went to the PS4, and it was the most talked about system. However, due to the hype of it, Sony completely neglected the Vita around this time, as well as some of the game releases became more and more sparse. And the sales in 2014 in the US were at all-time low. It was still popular in Japan, but the Vita was pretty much dead in the US. Third parties weren't releasing much, and thus, the Vita was quickly forgotten. So the Vita ended up being a commercial failure. Then why does it have such a diehard fanbase? There's many reasons for that. One is the library of games. If you're a fan of RPGs, then the Vita has you covered. There are action RPGs, hack and slash games, you name it, the Vita. The Vita also had the ability of remote play, which lets you play PS4 games on the Vita, very similar to how the Nintendo Switch is. While there weren't many PlayStation exclusives on the Vita, when there were, some of them were great, such as Killzone Mercenary, Uncharted Golden Abyss, Freedom Wars, and Tearaway, and Gravity Rush. But there is one area that the Vita exploded, and it's the main reason why the system is still alive and well. The homebrew scene. Like the PSP, you can hack your Vita to play homebrew games and emulators on the system. It's more trickier and complex than the hacking the PSP, but if you hack your Vita, you feel like you're in the top of the world. For starters, you can add Adrenaline. It's the PSP firmware where you can play PSP and PS1 games with ease. You can add RetroArch, which lets you play retro games on the Vita. But there's one feature that is very helpful. It's the Sg2 Vita Adapter. It allows you to add a micro SD card on your Vita, so that way you can add up to 64 to 124 gigabytes. So you can add so many games without worrying about storage issues. You can also use OBS on the Vita to stream games easily, and that's how I'm able to show you guys my own gameplay footage. With a hacked Vita, it unlocks the insane potential the system had, or what it could do. It brought new light to the system and made people who weren't interested on the Vita to get a PlayStation Vita. I didn't get my hands on a Vita until Christmas of 2017. My brother gave me his Vita, while eventually he got a white Vita. This is actually my first time experience with not only a PlayStation Portable system, but a non-Nintendo handheld in general. I've been always gaming handheld on Nintendo. It wasn't until the Game Gear and eventually this thing made me enjoy non-Nintendo handheld. My first experience with the Vita is actually God of War Ghost of Sparta. I decided to try that out first since I haven't played that game, and boy oh my did I really enjoy this game. It ran really smooth on the Vita, did not experience any lag. It's a great game. However though, we're here to talk about Vita games. So one of my favorite games on the PlayStation Vita is Killzone Mercenary. I'm going to be honest, I never played a Killzone game until this one, and I really enjoyed this game a lot. I was blown away from the graphics. In my opinion, these are some of the best on the system. Even in 2022, I still think this game looks amazing. It shows how a first-person shooter works really well on a portable system. Despite being 30 frames per second, it still runs smooth and plays great. It's too bad that this is one of the only good FPSs on the Vita. There was a Call of Duty game that was an absolute disaster. Borderlands, for what I heard, was just meh, and Resistance was just okay. So if there's a first-person shooter that you want, well, Killzone Mercenary is your only option. The next game that I really enjoyed was Tales of Hearts R. Almost said Tales of Arise. This was my first Tales game that I ever played in Vita. And thanks to this game and how much fun I had with it, I got Tales of Arise, and I was able to beat that game not too long ago. While I think Tales of Arise is the much better game, this was still a great time. It has some nice music, and the characters are really funny. Dragon's Crown, while on the PS3, is amazing on the Vita. It's so crisp and beautiful on the system, and just hacking and slashing enemies is just a lot of fun. A must-play for beat-em-up fans. Uncharted Golden Abyss was a great attempt of a portable Uncharted game. While it may not have been as good as the mainline games, it's still a great game, and they put a lot of effort in this one to make sure that you're not playing like a watered-down Uncharted. You're playing an Uncharted game, but it's just on a portable system. But you still get the cutscenes, the funny lines, and the great gameplay that comes with these Uncharted games. Tearaway is one of the most creative platformers on the system. It's a very easy, relaxing game, and one of the few games that uses the touchpad very well. Of course, how can I not mention Persona 4 Golden? Before 2020 of its Steam release, the only way to play this version of Persona 4 was on the Vita, and I enjoyed every minute of this game. From the music, from the characters, from the story, everything about this game was fantastic. I really enjoyed Persona 5, and I always appreciate that game for introducing me to the Persona series, but there's something about Persona 4 Golden that I just like a little bit more. Maybe the dungeons aren't as golden as 5 in my opinion. Earth Defense Force 2017 was a great time, although it was on the 360 and it was the first Earth Defense Force to be released outside of Japan. It runs really well on the Vita, and I had a great time with this game. Of course, the Vita versions of Mortal Kombat 9 and Dead or Alive 5 I put in a lot of time of. It's hard to believe that Mortal Kombat 9 was on the Vita in its entirety. Very impressive, kind of like Mortal Kombat Deception on the PSP. The fact to have a portable Mortal Kombat 9 is a dream come true. This would be 6 or 7 years later before Mortal Kombat 11 was on the Switch. There's also so many games I haven't mentioned, such as Demon Gaze, Ragnarok Odyssey, and of course Gravity Rush. It's because I just haven't been able to play them. There's just so many games I've been playing on the PSP and DS that I haven't really still dug deep in that Vita library. That, and also I've been playing a lot of retro games on the system. This system just has it all. Its own library of games, PSP games, PS1 games, retro games all together. There's just so much to do for the system, and it's just incredible. If you're planning on getting the Vita, be careful because you will spend a lot of money. Vitas right now are actually pretty popular for handheld enthusiasts, mainly because of the homebrew scene. So if you want a Vita, you're going to end up paying some good money. Same with its games. Kind of like the PSP in a way. I also recommend getting the first model, mainly for the OLED screen, but if you find it slim, pick it up, even though the LCD screen isn't as good as the OLED. And also, if you need any help on hacking these systems, I recommend checking out Tech James, who has done an amazing job showing you all the tricks of how to hack the Vita. And if you're also looking for games, check out PS2 Vita 2AM. He's another wonderful channel that shows you all the best games on the system.
Conclusion, the Vita is one of the biggest what-ifs in gaming. What if it did very well? What if it took off? What if Sony will make another handheld? We will never know. But despite being a commercial failure, despite Sony not caring about it at all, we still love this Vita. It is an unbelievable handheld with all the things it can do, such as play old games, play Vita games, play PSP games, play PS1 games, you name it, this handheld has it all. Now, it could be jeopardized because of the Steam Deck is on its way, but regardless what happens, 10 years later, we still love the Vita. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Video Game Lord 58 sign out, and long live the Vita.